When was the most inappropriate time you busted out in laughter? It was my own joke that fricked me. We were in class watching a video about a big fire in Chicago ages ago. The Triangle Shirt Factory fire, I believe. One of my classmates asked why they used children as workers. I responded with because they make good kindling, and immediately we started cracking up. The death stare from my teacher gave me the chills. So awful. So funny. In the middle of church when I was like 10, a little kid dropped a song lyric book off the second level and it hit some old lady in the back of the head during prayer. My mom shot me a glare, but I couldn't help it. When I was an altar boy at a funeral and the priest cut a loud fart as he elevated the host. Thank God for the incense, there was no escaping it. The divine wind. My grandma choked to death eating at S restaurant. She was very old and she was dead for no more than an hour when our immediate family was in the viewing room of the hospital saying our final goodbyes. My auntie, which is my grandma's oldest daughter, says she looks so peaceful like she's asleep. Then my mom starts bawling her eyes out, crying and hugging my grandma's body. I lean over to my cousin and say if she keeps shaking grandma like that she'll wake her up. It's not a funny nor clever joke, but the look on my cousin's face as he's trying not laugh ended up making me laugh out loud, which he finally gave, and we're both there in this sad situation laughing to tears. I was in a job interview and the woman asking questions looked like a fish and had a funny voice. The more she spoke the harder it was to hold in the laughter. Then I started to imagine what a fish would sound like if it could talk. I started watching her lips move, and with that thought in my head it was too much. I burst out laughing and couldn't stop laughing. EMT here. Thought it was a cycle. Show up, an 87-year-old woman is yelling her son got the disease in jail. Looked at his penis. He was erect. He took a Viagra and somehow his mom saw his penis and thought it was a disease. The scenarios running through my head got to me. The guy was embarrassed and went along with it being a disease. The mood was serious. I had to excuse myself. Former EMT here. I see you found the medium between load and go and stay and play. Ahaba. I was in the middle of a movie theater when one of the young children in the movie were dying. Out of nowhere I thought of a random joke I had heard before. I can't remember what it was, and starting wheezing in laughter as I watched a small boy dying on a hospital bed in the movie. My sister leaned over and whispered, "This is a sad scene," as if I somehow misinterpreted how I was supposed to act in the situation. I burst out laughing when I was getting the first set of treatments leading up to a root canal. The dentist was inside the tooth cleaning it out and injecting medicine when out of nowhere someone out in the lobby lets a huge fart rip, and I put my hand up for the dentist to stop for a moment and I laughed my butt off. Thankfully the dentist knew what was going on and didn't have any needles or drills near my teeth. Was at a wedding and the priest just sounded funny to me, but I was keeping it at bay. But I glanced at my friend who was also trying to hold it in and saw he was close to breaking when the priest said, "If anyone should have any reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace." And we both burst out laughing. Was so bad. I was crying tears, and everybody was looking at us. So embarrassing. Moij is what brings us to Jiva today. When my mother said described the act of a woman who was hitting a man with a chicken as pollos, because in Spanish polo means chicken but polo means dong dong. There's a scene in The Office where Dwight and Angela go for dinner after they broke up. Angela tears up and says, "I can't do this. I can't be with you. Every time I look in your eyes I see sprinkles." Stiff lifeless body. Dwight responds with, "Then don't look in my eyes. Look right here." Points to middle of forehead above the eyes. It's an old sales trick. Flash forward to a funeral, and it's a very solemn moment. As our family and I are greeting the deceased family's member, I am about to shake this old lady's hand, and I'm so nervous since we were told beforehand to not make eye contact with her as it made her uncomfortable. As I start to shake her hand and while I'm saying my condolences, I make eye contact in between her eyes and suddenly I'm reminded of Dwight Schrute's sales trick and I start bursting out of laughter. My parents were mortified and the lady started to tear up. It was not a good moment. When I was in psych wards, I used to laugh all the time in my psychiatrist appointments. They always looked so done whenever they tried to broach certain subjects, but I couldn't help it. Nervous laughter, I guess, and laughter at the fact I was there. Also laughed during the appointment I had to be sectioned. They sectioned me. I was running a small branch of a relatively large national company. There was a focus account where the customer wanted a nationwide rollout of a new campaign, except there was some foul up on their end, and we had to do a lot of extra work to make it happen for the customer. Out of 20 locations we had to do the rollout for, 19 had gone perfectly. The last was likely going just fine, but I couldn't get a hold of the person actually going to the site. This was late 90s, so cell phones were a thing, but not as ubiquitous as they are today. One of the high-level managers calls me and starts questioning what's going on. Why can't I confirm this location is done? I try explaining, but she keeps ramping up the anxiety until she finally hangs up on me. Not long later, the national sales director calls me, demanding a better explanation. I'm trying to smooth things over, but I do a little nervous laugh at some point while trying to calm the situation. She goes full ballistic on me. Do you think this is funny? And I just lose it. Full gigantic belly laughs. Because it is funny. We've already managed a 95% success rate on a last minute recovery, and the chances are very good that it's 100%. I just can't reach the last person yet, but I'm getting screamed at, but not by just the national sales director, but she also happens to be the wife of the owner of the company. I know in my head that it's ridiculous that my team and I pulled off near perfect success, and instead of being congratulated, I'm putting my very job in jeopardy by laughing at her, and I can't stop. My dad's funeral. My sister and I would always tease each other in church. We still do it as adults, just can't grow out of it. Dad's funeral was tough, so we poked and jabbed each other with our elbows. We laughed, but were crying as well. I think dad would have approved. Oh, wholesome. Last week my partner was trying to tell me that his stepmom was in hospital, but his first sentence was she was charged by a cow. Of course I was going to laugh. He should have started with she is in the hospital because. Wahaha. I started pee myself laughing during the Remembrance Day minute silence when I was 15. Seconds before the time hit 11 AM, a girl in our class told us her nose hurt because she snorted a line of sherbet. At a Sex Addicts Anonymous meeting, I was listening to a guy's story and he was revealing details of what he did that were absolutely bizarre and I couldn't control it. Basically had to bite my tongue hard and then pretend I was coughing while trying to stifle it. That didn't work, so I had to leave the room. People do weird and sometimes hilarious things just to get off. At my grandmother's funeral, the priest started singing very badly and he was really into it. It felt like I was in a bad comedy movie. Also, I dread ugly babies. I once was at a family gathering of an ex-boyfriend, and one of his aunt had a young baby. He had a huge head and looked like he has been dropped on the face several times. Everybody was repeating loudly how cute he was, and someone made eye contact with me. I was trying to fade in the background and contain myself, smiled and went, "Isn't he cute?" I had to run to the toilet, but I'm pretty sure they all heard me exploding in laughters. You say ugly babies as if babies aren't all naturally ugly, at least right after they come out. My best friend's funeral. He always had a sick, twisted sense of humor. He wasn't religious, but his family is, so the service was super churchy. At one point, the minister went on about how God's love is long and hard and deep. I pictured him sitting next to me and looking over and snickering with a goofy look on his face like he always had in situations like that. I couldn't help but to snicker a little at that. It always really pisses me off when a family tries to take it into their own hands to make someone's funeral different to how the dead person would have wanted it. Someone who is an atheist being given a Catholic-style funeral, or a perpetual jokester having a funeral of all black and all long faces, just doesn't seem like the right way to honor their memory. My friend started laughing in the middle of a packed theater during The Amazing Spider-Man 2 right after Gwen Stacy died. Like, immediately after she hit the concrete. You could have heard a pin drop in this frickin' place if it weren't for him laughing. So he's laughing and then I start laughing because he's laughing at this ridiculously bad time, and our mutual friend who's sitting between us starts hitting us both to be quiet. Nope. I crap you not, I didn't stop giggling until the credits started to roll. After we got out of the theater, I demanded to know why my friend started laughing. He started giggling again and said that the only thing he could think of when he saw her go was that humans normally void their bowels immediately after they die. So basically, my friend and I made fools of ourselves in public because he couldn't stop himself from thinking about Gwen Stacy crapping herself post-mortem during Spider-Man. Damn it. Next time I see that movie, that's what I'm gonna be think about during that scene. Not me, but my friend. We had a senior project in high school that required us to sit in on sermons at churches of different faiths. We were at a Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall and they started passing a microphone up and down the aisles and anyone who felt like it could say whatever was on their hearts or minds or whatever. Anyway, the mic made it to a man who was mentally handicapped and he screamed Jesus wavs yo into the mic and my schoolmate absolutely lost his mind, laughing uncontrollably. For the remainder of the service, he would try to hold in the laughter, leave the room and try to walk it off, return and then start snorting and coughing and laughing uncontrollably. It was ridiculous. Haha. I was 14 and was in hospital having just tried to end my life. I was having my heart monitored and had a bunch of those sticker thingies all over me attached to different machines. I was so incredibly delirious. I guess I couldn't handle being alive or all of the emotions I was facing. I'd been so accepting of okay I'm going to die, but I'd been found that I had no real control over anything. The nurse said now you're going to look a bit like a robot for a bit. Okay, being so young I was in a kid's hospital, and the poor nurses were doing their best to keep me afloat, and I started giggling, which turned to maniacal laughing, which turned to sobbing. I'm not sure if anyone else experiences this, but when I hear really awful news my first reaction is to laugh. It's really bad and I can't seem to stop it from happening. The worst case was when a friend of the family's child passed away and I had to leave the room as quickly as I could so they didn't see me laughing. Oh god, I can relate to that. There must be a psychological explanation as to why that happens. I was at a St. Joseph's table years ago. This is an Italian-American tradition where all the Sicilian and Italian families in an area gather for a big feast. They pick a child from each family to represent one of the saints at the Last Supper. You can imagine the kind of people here. Women with big hair, men in silk suits, kids running around everywhere. Anyway, the bishop of that diocese came to bless the feast, and during the silence of the prayer, some gaudy woman's cell phone goes off. It's the Godfather theme. I laughed so loud and everyone turned and gave me nasty looks. My grandmother's funeral. The priest kept saying her name wrong and my sister and I both got the giggles, couldn't stop. It was the hardest day of my life but we just couldn't stop laughing in between crying. My grandma would have found it hilarious though. On a break from a job I had roofing, I mentioned to the group that I had given blood recently. My friend said he hadn't given in a while. Another guy said yeah, I can't give blood, hepatitis, which still makes me laugh, just the way he said it. Then, over my laughter, he said, must have got it from some cause I've never done needle drugs. Then I confusedly apologized for my laughter, not really understanding why he would volunteer that information. He could have just said, I don't like being stabbed, and bleeding like everyone else. 9/11. Freshman in a high school in New York. Had no idea what was going on and school had only started a few days ago so wasn't really used to the routine and what was and wasn't normal. In between classes I'm walking with a friend and there is a huge crowd in front of the school mini theater, which we used for presentations and such. Didn't think too much of it as again school had started maybe 6 days ago and I had no basis for the routine. Friend of mine starts to tell me a joke. I don't know what it is but I sure as crap know it's inappropriate as heck so I start cracking the heck up. Just loads and loads of laughter. Right in front of me is the guidance counselor. He is not at all amused by my disrespect and starts to berate me. I'm confused. In my head my teenage brain thinks dude it's just a freaking joke, calm down. I turn to the big butt projector screen and just think holy crap what the frick. TLDR. Laughter wasn't a result of the inappropriate thing. It was definitely very ill-timed. Happy anniversary to that joke. When I was getting my daughter's vaccinations I was sitting in the waiting room. A mom with a young son was crouching in front of him when her oversized purse slid down her arm gaining speed and hit him in the face. He flew back and landed on his butt stunned. It was such a comical situation I burst out laughing. Even a few minutes later thinking about it I burst out laughing again. Dead quiet waiting room and I wasn't able to control my laughter. I felt like a terrible person but I wish I had it on video. I was a bridesmaid at a friend's very serious, very Catholic wedding. Prior to the ceremony, there had been a bridesmaids luncheonette with all of us and many of the bride's older female family members, well dressed, upper middle class aunts, grandma, family friends. At a country club we're all going around the table, making small talk. They're asking about our college majors, etc. And they get to me. Well, I'm going to vet school, but I'm an animal and dairy sciences major right now. What does that entail? Honestly, it's mostly about running a farm. For instance, I just got certified to artificially inseminate cattle. Silence. Then, with partial strangled politeness and partial genuine curiosity, how does one do that? Well, see, you put on this long plastic glove, and I then go on to pantomime reaching my hand straight out and into the rectum of a cow, while I explain the technicalities. Everyone is laughing and the bride is shaking her head. We all joke about it the whole day. It becomes an inside joke between all these ladies. Fast forward to the next day at the ceremony, which has been very somber and liturgical, and suddenly, right in the middle, the priest says, "And now, everyone, I want us all to extend our blessings as a congregation to this couple. Please, reach out your hand right now," and thrusts his hand straight forward. I never heard the rest of what he said. I hit the ground braying, as did another bridesmaid, and another one almost fell from trying to support us. There were elderly ladies giggling in the audience, and the bride had tears running down her face from trying to hold it in, but luckily it came off as genuine emotion. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you ruin a Catholic wedding without saying a word. Masterclass goofery. Opening night of Titanic. You know the scene. Guy falls from banister and screams all the way down until he thwacks a propeller and ragdolls down into the ocean. My friend and I were on a double date with some cute girls we had met on America Online. They were really into us until we both destroyed the ambience of a tragedy unfolding with our uncontrollable laughter. Packed theater of people gasping, two immature kids howling with laughter for minutes straight. The girls were not impressed. I got smacked by my date for laughing at that part. Sometimes at a funeral, it's awful, but it's always happened to me. I just giggle at times during the services. I have no control over it, except to cover my mouth. My ex-GF tried to bake me a chocolate cake for my birthday. I could see from the start that she was trying to replace some ingredients with others, which usually doesn't turn out right for baking unless you really know what you're doing. I was a bit high and decided not to criticize. Who knows, maybe it would turn out awesome. When it came out of the oven I literally fell on the floor laughing. It looked so unedible. I couldn't stop laughing for a solid 10 minutes. We're not together anymore. I've had this moment. My girlfriend got into baking this last year and was attempting a certain cake for the first time. She told me not to judge it too harshly when I saw it. Dang if it wasn't the ugliest cake I ever saw. I burst into fits of laughter and still do now when I think about it. Thankfully it tasted delicious. My grandma's funeral. She was 94 and had been somewhat healthy for her age but had been warning us for at least 10 years that she could die at any time. Like when my daughter had her first birthday and my grandma gave me her present 2 weeks early in case I don't make it. The kid is now 11. Or one Christmas where she told me what wedding I would do at her funeral. Or when she was talking to my uncle, from the other side of the family, about his elderly mother and grandma told him that the government should kill everyone at 95 still they're all waiting to die anyway. Then in May they discovered her body was actually full of cancer and doctors had no idea how she was functioning, and she died less than a month later. Her funeral was fully planned out by her years before and had all the usual hymns and speeches, except the one song I didn't know. It started slow, then suddenly picked up into this dancey tune that was singing about being on her way, like the happiest song I've ever heard about being dead, and I knew she'd picked it. I started laughing so hard, I tried to cover my face with the program but because my shoulders were shaking it looked like it was sobbing and family around me were trying to pat my back. Then my sister and I saw each other and I knew she was thinking the same as me and now she's dying of laughter too. In the end I was crying, so it sorta looked less like I was insane. Weirdly wholesome. At my grandfather's funeral, he was in an urn in front of us, where my cousins and I in the front row all burst into giggles and laughter when my brother whispered, "It is a modestly priced receptacle." My grandfather would have appreciated the joke, but most of the audience did not. Screw them, we needed to laugh. In Auschwitz, while we were in the gas chamber, I was there with my family and some family friends when one of the boys who was with us, he was 10, tugged on my shirt and innocently asks, "What's the difference between a Jew and a pizza?" I lost my crap. The tour guide just happened to be an Auschwitz survivor, and she was not very pleased. I was asked to distance myself from the tour to get myself together. At my grandfather's funeral, my grandfather was always a prick to us grandkids. He'd make us swim laps up and down the beach. He'd swear at us if we didn't wear a smile on our faces while pulling up lobster pots, so the adults could eat lobsters. He was also racist and generally just not someone I try to model myself after. At his funeral, one of my father's cousins said something like, "He was just always so great with you kids," which I laughed at, because that's so absurd as to be funny. Apparently my cousin once removed was not intending for it to be a joke. I was in JROTC in high school. We were the Navy branch. One day, we had a day off from the other school classes because of an awards ceremony, and spent part of the day playing kickball. After a while, we had to fall in formation, and one of the petty officers called two cadets to the front and started yelling at them and making them do push-ups. They had to keep doing them until they figured out what they did wrong. Well, it turns out that those two were in the school halls on their way back from the restrooms, and they decided to moon the camera. Once I heard this, I had to stifle my laughter, though thankfully, no one got onto me about it. Not me, but a girl in my class. We were watching a play about the brothers De Witt, two Dutch noblemen who were lynched by an angry mob, when one of the characters said about the character that was his girlfriend, "No, my dear, not the intestines," in a very serious tone. My classmate burst into laughter and everybody stared at her. It was really funny actually. My uncle was one of the funniest men I had ever met. He had the perfect comment for any situation. His wit was very dry at times, which meant some of his jokes flew over some heads, but generally everyone knew that he was hilarious. When he died, and we were at the funeral, it was announced that it was in his wishes for his favorite song to be played at his memorial. Fair enough. The funeral director brings a boombox to the front of the room and presses play. Cue Lynyrd Skynyrd's Free Bird. If you don't know anything about Free Bird, you need to know this. It's about 9 minutes long. So, we were all forced to sit there for 9 long minutes while we listened to the song. I couldn't help it. At around minute 2, I started choking, trying to keep the laughter in. My mother, whose brother we were saying our final goodbyes to, asked me what was wrong. I explained to her what exactly was so funny. She started laughing, too. Luckily, others joined in after a little bit. I like to think of that as his final joke on us. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.